everybody. Today is Monday, I'm sorry, wrong. That was yesterday. Today is Tuesday, December 15th. Welcome to the Westwood School Committee meeting. My name is Carol Lewis and I'm chair of this committee. At this point, I'm calling this meeting to order and we'll start with attendance. Maya Plotkin.
Here.
Tony Mullen.
Here.
Charlie Donahue.
Here.
Amanda Phillips.
Here.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. Also here in attendance today, just for those who don't typically attend the Westwood School Committee meetings and may not have attended these school building committee forums, we have Superintendent Emily Parks. We have Director of Business and Finance, Lemma Jean-Baptiste. We have Abby Hanscom, Director of Student Services. We have Sarah Cronin, Principal of the Hanlon School, Josh Baumer, Principal of the Deerfield School, and Steve Roulette, Director of Technology. Did I miss anyone? If I did, I apologize. Okay, thank you all for joining us tonight. At this point, I want folks to know that this is a live broadcast. Live streaming is available through the Westwood Media Center and also online through our website. This is to provide real-time public access to the school committee activities in accordance with the March 12, 2020 Executive Order of Governor Baker. I also want to recognize that Westwood Media Center is recording this meeting and it is available later for later broadcast. At this point, folks, we'll move into our discussion item for tonight, which is the elementary schools building project presentation. I'm going to turn this virtual floor over to Maya Plotkin, chair of the school building committee. Maya, take it away, kid.
Thank you, Carol. I also wanted to introduce a couple more people on this panel.
Did you change anything?
We have Don Walter, who is the principal architect at Doran Whittier. Rob Fitzgerald from Doran Whittier, who is our project manager. Tim Bonfatti, who is with Compass. They are owner's project manager, and Chin Lin, who is also with Compass. Again, our project manager. So we want to welcome them as well. So thank you very much. So welcome everyone. Tonight's purpose is to give everybody an overview of the current project, design status, and talk about costs and next steps. And then most importantly, give everybody an opportunity to provide feedback, to ask questions, to really sort of interact with this project and let us know what you're thinking. We'll get into the Q&A a little bit at the end, but I think just to keep in mind, the best way if you want to participate is to be on the Zoom. So if you're on the live stream, you might want to switch over to the Zoom. And once you're on the Zoom, I think the easiest way to get your questions heard is to put them in the chat once we're ready to, once we enter the Q&A portion of the evening. You can certainly raise your hand and we can call on you, but so far it seems to us that the chat has been working well. So we will read every question and answer every question that comes in. So just keep that in mind. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Rob Fitzgerald, who's going to kick off our presentation.
Great. Thanks, Maya. So tonight, we're going to give a little bit of an overview of the schematic design inspiration and an overview of the project itself. We'll talk about schedule and phasing, go over some cost estimates that we've just received, and then review next steps. So just a little background on the project. Located right here, or I should say right here, is the existing Hanlon Elementary School site. And the proposed project is located here just behind it on the Shuttleworth property. The Shuttleworth property is about 37 acres and it's owned by the town. It's dedicated for municipal and school use. The proposed project is planned to encompass roughly around 9 acres, which will add to the approximately 8.5 acres of the existing Hanlon site. One of the things that we found when we were just starting to look at this property is that there's actually about 300 acres of wooded area conservation and trust land in behind the Shuttleworth property. And so this really kind of led us to take a closer look at those woods and use that as an inspiration for our design. So, we took a walk through that area, looked at the materials, the stone, the earth, the wood, the colors, and so forth, and really kind of took that and ran with it when we started thinking about building in a number of different ways. One of the ways was, of course, the exterior materials, and so we started looking at trying to keep a neutral look with some grays and browns and wood type tones. And then we also began to look at different types of buildings, a variety of different types, created an inspiration board, share that with the aesthetics working group, which is a subgroup from the school building committee. We invited the school building committee members as a whole to participate as well, and then had a public community forum where we shared this and received feedback. So through that whole process, we were able to take a lot of information and feedback from the comments and integrate that into the design as it progressed forward. So diving into the site plan, I'll kind of give a brief overview. So the existing school is this dashed black line here that you can kind of lightly see in this area. And the proposed building is over here to the west. We're proposing a bus loop that would enter in from the north and loop around and then exit back out. And then a parent drop off, which would come in from the south and loop around and then exit out. And what this does is allows us to have, this walkway. We know that with the existing Hamlin School, there are a lot of walkers that go to the school. And so it was important for us to create this kind of unobstructed walkway leading up into the building for students. The other element is the athletic fields, creating this sort of green band along Gay Street as part of the community aspect of the project, easy access, and just providing a green park area for community use. Then further into the site, we have the building. Speaking of the public areas, and May will go over this a little bit later on in the presentation. But on this side of the building here is the public or community side as well as student use. But the gym is located here, the cafeteria is located here. These types of spaces that like to have easy access to parking for after school events or weekend events. And then the rest of the building, these other wings are the academic wings. So we have kindergarten and first grade, second, third, fourth, and fifth. And then on the far west side of the building, we have the play areas. So we've got kindergarten and first and second through fifth play areas. We're planning to have some hardscape areas as well, easy access from the cafeteria and from the classroom wings. The other aspect of this is that there is an existing trail that runs through the property that leads out to the low woods. And so recognizing that, we are proposing to create a new path around the property and circle back so that it does connect over to the low trail and continue to have that community access to those woods. So one of the updates that we have to the site plan is what was developed after some continued discussions with the police and fire chiefs. And really the idea here is to extend this fire access road instead of having a turnaround space and exiting back out. There was a strong desire to provide a second means of egress out of that access road. So this extension provides a full loop around the building. And really that's just for an emergency situation. Normally this would be closed off throughout the day at both ends so that There's really no traffic at all back there, and it would only be used in an emergency type situation. So there would be a hard surface play area that could be used, by the school, close access to the cafeteria, and then these play areas integrated into the hill. So looking at some of the exterior imagery, this is a rendering view from Gay Street, looking at the building. This is the soccer field right here. The league field is over to the right. This is a view from Gay Street at the northern entrance. This is going in by the bus loop here. The Little League baseball field over to the left. And this is that walkway I was just talking about. Again, trying to create an inviting access path for students to get to the school. This is about halfway up that path. You can see the fields over to the left, leading up to the building. This is a little bit further along. This is a view from the bus loop, looking at the main entrance to the building. The gym is on the right, and one of the classroom wings is over to the left. And then this is crossing the bus loop. It was important to create this entry canopy to really kind of show and point to where the main entrance is into the building, and provide a covered area during inclement weather. And then this is a view from the parent drop-off. As you can see, some of the landscaping that we're proposing is really trying to create a little bit more of that woodlands feel. So again, kind of integrating itself into the natural landscape and the surroundings. And this is a view from the visitor parking area, having a presence here of a nice open-ended kind of canopy, inviting students to come into the building. And then this is a view of the southern classroom wing. So this area right here is the sort of outdoor classroom area we're calling the STEAM porch, science, technology, engineering, math, and art. The art classroom is located over to the left. This is a STEM lab, and then in the middle is a two-story library component. And as you can see, what we're doing here is integrating, the solar shading into the design of the building, and with these horizontal elements contrasting with the verticality of the trees. So the way that the building is oriented is all the classrooms are either facing north or south, and that way we can control the light and shade into those classrooms throughout the day. This is a closer look at that STEAM porch. Planning to have some water access out there so that there may be some science activities that can be done with teachers bringing students out as well. And then this is a view of the building overall. So again, we have the gym here with lots of natural light coming in. These will be a special glass that's translucent, so it'll disperse the light in a nice kind of ambient way. Then this is that's southern classroom wing I was just showing you. The main entrance over here, then the cafeteria is in behind that. So now looking at the floor plan, again, this is the sort of public or community side of the wing when the building is used after hours. This here in purple is the extended day program, so they've got close access to the main entrance. When visitors come to the main entrance here, you have the administration area with a clear view to people that are coming in. Cafeteria, 2 music spaces. This is the kindergarten on the first floor and first grade on the second floor. The pink spaces represent various spaces for student support and special education. So these are kind of sprinkled around the building. Down here on the southern wing, we have 2nd and 3rd grade, and then 4th and 5th in the upper level, the library media center in the center of the building as a destination, but also an integral part to the educational aspects of the wing, with a close collaboration with art and STEM just adjacent to it. And then moving on to the second floor, it's a very similar layout. So the idea behind the design of each of these wings is so that if you wanted to switch grade levels from one wing to another, you could do that. Fifth grade can be on the first floor, for example, if that was desired. And then in the purple spaces are all either multi-stall or single-user toilet rooms. So one of the main elements that's been integrated into the project from the beginning is the idea of integrating sustainability into the design. We met a large number of times with various members of the community, with members of the town. There's a sustainability subcommittee to the school building committee. And over that period of time, we've developed this product to be a net zero energy ready building. So one of the main aspects of that is creating a building with very low energy use. This EUI is energy use intensity. So right now we're tracking 21. We're working closely with Eversource, which is a utility company that is providing some incentives for staying under 25. And so that's something that we are actively striving to keep. Not only is it an opportunity to get some incentive money, but it's also an opportunity to continue annual savings through operation savings from low energy use. We're planning for this to be a fossil fuel-free building. So we've got geothermal wells planned. So it'll be all electric. We are integrating the photovoltaic infrastructure into the building, designing the roof so it can support photovoltaic panels when the school district is ready to determine that they're ready to put photovoltaic panels on it. And can easily achieve the net zero energy with renewable energy certificates. We've integrated a high performance ventilation system, which is displacement ventilation. It's a state-of-the-art system of bringing in air down low and then raising up. So it's providing a very good indoor air quality. And it's an added feature when we think about the current conditions of the pandemic that we're in. It's an optimal ventilation system in that regard as well. We have integrated super insulated roofs and walls into the design, again, which is helping to attribute to this low energy use. And we're targeting LEED Silver in terms of our green building program, which is very good, the version 4. And then this diagram here is just showing, that we are doing our part in terms of taking steps to address climate change. So all electric buildings do reduce carbon use over time. So switching over to community use, I'll let Maya kind of go over some of these slides here.
Thanks, Rob. So from the start of this project, one of the things that was really important to us was the idea that this isn't just a Hanlon-Deerfield project, for the Hanlon-Deerfield community, that it's actually a Westwood project and that the whole community benefits from this new school. And so we wanted to just give you a few examples of how we feel that this building will serve the community. As Rob mentioned, sort of primarily this building was designed to have public and private spaces. And what we mean by that is the public, what we're calling a public space is really what the community could use after hours. So the cafeteria has a performance space, which we'll show you. The gym, has opportunities to host tournaments. And all of those areas can be accessed from the public, while we can easily at the same time lock off what we're calling the private or the academic spaces. So the public can kind of come and go into this public spaces while we're keeping those academic spaces secure and not open to the public. You don't need to walk through any academic space to get to these public areas. So just highlighting some of the things on this site plan. So first we have the athletic fields. There is, as shown, an 11v11 soccer field. I should mention that, in the planning stages of this project, we had phone conversations with Westwood Little League, Westwood Youth Soccer, Westwood Rec Department, Westwood Basketball Association, the Westwood Athletic Department, Westwood Lacrosse. I think I'm missing someone. But we spoke to all of these organizations because we really wanted to understand the need in Westwood, what these organizations felt they were lacking, what would be nice to have. And as a result of those, we tried to fit in as much as we could on this site. So you'll see, as I mentioned, there's an 11v11 soccer field. This is a new soccer field. So this would be in addition to our current inventory of fields. And there's also a Little League field here. As you know, probably there is currently a baseball field at Hanlon. It is not Little League size, it's smaller. So this would be an actual Little League sized baseball field. You can see on this slide that the cafeteria and the gym are very easily accessed. They're in that blue box that is under the public. So they're easily accessed from the parking lots, where again, there's ample parking for all of these events. There's about 150 spaces. So you can easily access either the fields or the public spaces, the cafeteria, the gym, from the parking lot. And finally, as Rob mentioned, what was really important to us is maintaining the access to Lowell Woods. We recognize that right now the trail runs through where we're planning on placing this school. And one of the promises that we made to the community is that we would provide continuous access to Lowell Woods from the Hanlon site. And so one of the first things we're going to do, and Rob will explain this when we get into the phasing, one of the first things we're going to do is actually create this new trail around the construction site so that the community will continue to be able to access Lowell Woods uninterrupted, even during construction. And hopefully at the end of the day, we'll have a really nice trailhead for it and try and do some educational things along the way. So those are some of the community uses for the site plan. We want to take you inside now. So this is sort of your typical, this is how we would use the school during a school day. We've got the administrative portion, where the administrative assistant sits, where the principal sits. There's some conference rooms there. We've got the cafeteria where clearly kids will have lunch. And then there's 2 music rooms there, which will be used for music classes. And finally, we have the gym, which clearly would be used for PE. So that's how it would be used during the school day. Flipping to the next slide, you'll see how we will use it after hours, how the community can use this. So first of all, if there's an event, you would walk into the vestibule and there's an area in the lobby where you could welcome people, you could check them into whatever event they're going to. The cafeteria is also a performance center. So we're not going over the top with this. This isn't going to look like the auditorium at Westwood High, but this is, it's going to be designed to be multifunctional. So it can not only be a cafeteria during the day, but also be a performance space at night. And also, during the day when there's events at the school. That what we're calling the green room, which is one of the music classrooms, will serve that performance room. So, actors will get ready in the green room and then be able to access the stage fairly easily. So that's a great option. As you know, the Westwood High School auditorium and other areas are heavily in demand, particularly in the spring when there's lots of recitals. So this is just going to add to that inventory for the school to be able to offer. The gym. So the gym is 3 times the size of the existing gym and double the size of what a typical elementary school would have as a gym. And this is absolutely by design. One of the things we heard loud and clear from the community was that there is not enough gym space, that we're constantly looking for gym. We're renting other gyms. So what we've designed here is a gym that holds 1 high school sized basketball court, which you can see in the yellow. It'll also have 2 middle school cross courts, which can be used at the same time. So in total, we've got 3 courts, 2 of which can be used at the same time, one of which is a regulation high school size basketball court. There is going to be a divider curtain, which will serve a purpose during the school if we have 2 PE classes going on at the same time, and also after hours if we've got 2 games going on at the same time. We've got built-in bleachers that will be able to push up when we need the space for that particular court, or, you know, on either end or sort of where you see them located. The beauty of this, it also has an adaptive PE space, which is really important for our special education program. Again, this is something we can specially design to serve the needs of some of our high needs students. And it will have an AV sound system, which is very exciting. And finally, we have the extended day after school area, which Rob had pointed out earlier. This will serve, it's a direct view to visitors. It's right in front of the building. So security for extended day is very much thought of. And it also has easy access to the gym, to the cafeteria, to the performance space. So we've kept that in this area, what we're calling, again, the public area. And then the next slide. And so this is just an example of a classroom wing. And we just wanted to point out that these 2 could be used by the community. The enrichment program during the summer, as you know, is usually held at the middle school, but this could certainly serve, this could be a place where we could hold enrichment classes. The Westwood Rec Department has a lot of after school and summer activities. And again, they use district schools. So this would be a great place for the Westwood Rec Department to hold some of those events. And finally, we have various community groups that are always looking for space in our schools. And again, the classroom wings are a great place for them to be able to have their events as well. So that's just sort of a flavor of what how we feel the community can really benefit from this building. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Rob to talk about construction schedules.
So in terms of the schedule that we're in right now, we are right approximately here, just before the start of 2021. Over the next few months, we've got a submission of our schematic design package. There'll be an MSBA vote. And then in May and June are the planned town votes. And then after that, we've got roughly 11 months of preparation of continuation of the design and preparation of the bid documents, going out to bid, and then roughly a 2-year construction period. So we've got phase 1 and 2 from July 2022 to February 2024. Right now, we're tentatively planning a move in March of 2024, and then finishing up the remaining portion of the site construction by August of 2024. So how that looks in terms of phasing. So the very first step would be to have a contractor come in and construct fencing around the construction area. And then, clear the site for future work to happen. They would also construct this kind of connecting path so that the community can park, let's say, in behind the existing school as they currently do, and continue up this path and continue using the woods during construction, so it'll be separated from the construction zone. Phase 2 would be to construct the building itself, which is expected to be about 19 months. And then after that's complete, the students would move from the existing Hanlon School into the new building. And then the 4th phase is to abate and remove the existing Hanlon School and continue with the remaining amount of site work out in the front area there. So as I mentioned, we have received a couple cost estimates And I'm just going to go over some words so that people have a clear understanding of what we're talking about when we talk about construction costs versus project costs and what alternates are. So construction costs are the costs associated with the construction of the site and the building. So when we put together a set of drawings and specifications, we issue that out to bid. When we receive the bids in, that is the construction cost. It does not include the cost of furniture or furnishing the building. It doesn't include, say, computers or other loose technology. Those types of costs fall under the soft costs, along with consultant costs for architects and engineers, the owner's project manager, commissioning agent, permitting, testing, number of contingencies. So anything that's not built into the building basically kind of falls under these soft costs. And the project cost is the sum of both of those combined. So that's the total amount that's presented to the public at the town meeting. So that's the amount that's being authorized to bond. And then the term alternate is used to describe any items that are desired to be included in the project. Let's say if the bids come in favorable, if they come in below what the expectation is, and so it's determined that, hey, we can afford to take this particular item, and it can get incorporated into the project. So that's essentially the overview of that. So the construction costs that we've been targeting, based on the previous cost estimates and the early study phases, is that we're seeking to come in at about 70.3 million with an 88.1 project cost. So we had cost estimates prepared by two different cost estimators, one that Warren Whittier hired and one that Compass hired. So you're totally independent in reviewing the same set of drawings and specifications. And they provided cost estimates. One was a little lower and one was a little bit higher. And we spent a full day reconciling them through a reconciliation process until both cost estimators agreed on ultimately on a reconciled number. And so that reconciled number came to 71,068, which is about 686,000 above what we had currently previously targeted. And one of the reasons for that was since that original estimate, there were a number of things that were desired to be integrated. One was using a natural gas emergency generator instead of the diesel. We integrated radon mitigation, primarily due to the amount of ledge that was found through the borings and test pits. The schedule was extended primarily due to the COVID change in dates for the town meetings. The access road connection that I discussed earlier, and then the amount of ledge that's being removed. So we were anticipating that the number would come in higher. So that was really not much of a surprise. So what we've done is put together a list of items that can result in potential savings. So this is about $2.4 million worth of items that that the school building committee will be taking a closer look at over the next month. So they're dividing up into different kind of subgroups to look at those items, and they'll be deciding, do these items go into one of these buckets? Do we accept the savings and the modification? Do we make it into an alternate, or do we not accept it? And so we'll be going through that in January, and the school building committee will be reviewing that and making a final decision on the total budget at that point. One of the things that they did decide already previously was to incorporate what's called a UVC system, which is ultraviolet light that gets integrated into the ductwork. And that was an item that it's kind of like a belts and suspenders, or it's a higher level of addressing the potential for virus particles that may be in the air. And so the high performance ventilation system that we have currently designed is using MERV 14 filters. It's what the CDC and ASHRAE guidelines recommend. Actually, I think they recommend 13, and we're putting in the 14. But the UVC is a kind of one step above that. So instead of 85% of the particles, it's like to 92 or 93. I don't have the exact number right now, but in any case, this is something that the school building committee is interested in, and they would like to include that as an alternate. So when we look at the building and compare it to other similar projects, we've got our Hanlon School over here on the far left, with a construction start date anticipated to be in 2022. Our construction cost per square foot is approximately $621 currently. Net zero ready. We have geothermal planned for the projects. We currently are not carrying the cost of photovoltaic panels themselves on top of the building in that number. When we look at a few other towns, we look at Medfield, for example, Westboro, Wellesley, and Ashland. You can see that they are either, there's a couple that are above and a couple below. But basically, we're right in line, right in the middle, in between these. And each of these has some subtle differences between each other. Some have geothermal as an alternate, no PV panels. Other ones have geothermal with PV panels. And so some of that could be contributing factors to the difference in costs. Aside from the normal differences each site and building has itself, there are other differences from project to project that could have an influence on the cost difference. But generally speaking, I guess what we're trying to show here is that we're riding kind of in line with some other similar elementary schools on similar construction start times.
And Rob, one more thing to note about the cost, if you can go back 2 slides. So all of these numbers that we're showing don't contemplate any MSBA reimbursement that we may receive or that we will receive. And that we don't have that number quite yet, but we should have that a good estimate of that number by mid-February, I would say, or late February. And so these are sort of the numbers before the MSBA reimbursement. I just wanted to point that out.
And would you like to go over next steps, Maya?
Sure. So the next steps for the building project. So last night we had a joint meeting with the select board and the FinCom to give a very similar presentation than the one we're giving tonight. Tonight's the community presentation. Between now and January 22nd, as Rob mentioned, the school building committee is going to be looking at the budget and looking at some of these options and do some what we call value engineering, which means basically look to see where can we cut costs. So we're going to be looking very closely at a number of options that have been identified by Doran Whittier and Compass that we could take out of the project. With some are less painful than others, but we're going to be doing a deep dive to hopefully get back to our target number, if not below. And then at the January 22nd SBC meeting, we'll be voting on those options, whether to accept them or pull them out of the project. On February 5th, the SBC is going to take a final vote. On January 22nd, we're going to review those options. We're not voting that day. We're actually going to wait a week, flush out some questions if anybody has any questions or needs a little more information. And then we will vote on February 5th on the budget and also on the overall schematic design submission that we will be submitting to the MSBA. This is the sort of final submission we have before the MSBA votes on our reimbursement amount. February 24th, the design team will submit the schematic design package to the MSBA. We are currently hoping to be in the, well, we are planning to be in their April board meeting, and that's where they will finalize the amount of the reimbursement. But again, as mentioned, you know, with the submission on the 24th, on February 24th, we actually include a worksheet that details what we think the MSBA reimbursement will be, and we'll know fairly soon after that if we're not on target, if they disagree with that. So even though the vote isn't until April, we should know before that really what we think the amount will be. And finally, May town meeting, we will present to town meeting for a vote. And assuming it's a yes vote, we will move to a ballot vote in June. This is going to be a special election for this vote. And assuming that's a go, then we move forward into the rest of the project schedule that Rob mentioned earlier. We will be having some future community forums in February or March, and we're not quite sure when, but we will announce those as soon as we know. And then we also had on here FinCom meetings, because these are where we will be presenting to FinCom this project for inclusion in the annual town meeting warrant. So those are the next steps. We're now very happy to take questions, comments, and reactions. As I mentioned earlier, we have found it easier if you put them in the chat and we'll read them word for word. But if you'd rather raise your hand, you certainly could do that as well. We have that option. I think we have Western Media Center monitoring that for us. So I'm going to start. We have a couple questions already in the chat, so I'm going to start with those. So first from Christine, what will the current Deerfield School building be used for moving forward? So right now the Deerfield School is clearly under the purview of the school committee and the school district. Once the schools are consolidated into the new Hanlon School, then the school district and the school committee will look at the Deerfield School and decide if there's any reason to keep that school within the district. Does the district need it for any operational purposes? If the district decides it does not need it, it will go back to the town. The control of the school will revert back to the town. And then it's up to the town to decide what to do with that school, whether they use it for additional administrative offices or programming space, or whatever the town feels it should be best used for. So once again, the school will decide whether or not it needs to continue to operate it, and if it does not, it will go back to the town. There's another question from Christine. Who came up with the target budget from the construction? Tim, do you want to take that question?
Sure. So the target budget was basically established or approved by the school building committee at the last stage when we decided when we knew what we were going to do and where it was going to be. So essentially it came out of kind of early designs around once we knew the size of the building, once we knew the site requirements, once we knew the ed program and what would need to be in the building, once we knew the sustainability goals for the project. And so all that kind of was put together, and both us and both Compass and Doran Whitty estimated it, and we came up with an agreed upon target budget that would accomplish that. And that was back in July or June, I think even. And so that's what the budget that the school building committee has directed us to continue sort of keeping as our top end. I think, as Maya said, our goal would be to try to see if we can do better than that moving into the final phase.
Great, thanks, Tim. So we have a question in the chat. Hello, thank you for the presentation. This is from Karen, and apologies if I'm mispronouncing your last name, Karen Jordanides. Hello, thank you for the presentation. The plans look lovely. However, I'm very concerned about the cost in this economic environment. Why was the middle school not considered for the project, and are there plans for the Sheehan? Emily, do you want to speak to the middle school?
Sure, yes, I'd be happy to. Hi. I mean, I guess the short answer is that, we're constantly looking at our capital needs in the district, looking at our buildings, our facilities, and thinking about what we need to keep the district running. It's kind of a constant cycle of looking at those needs. And currently, our most pressing needs in the district are 3 of our elementary schools, which date back to the late 40s and 50s. And so those where we saw the most urgent needs to be addressed. And we decided to address those first. The middle school, the oldest part of the middle school certainly is an old part of the building. But actually, we have more recently addressed some of the needs in the middle school. So we have 2 different modular additions on the middle school. And the building itself is just structurally in better shape than, for instance, the Hanlon School. So we just went where the most urgent issue is.
Thanks. And then with respect to the Sheehan, so, we had sort of identified, as Emily mentioned, these 3 schools that were in need. And we knew from the start that if we were to consolidate 2 of them, that would leave a remainder school. So in February of 2020, before we identified what the final project would be, the school committee allocated around $30,000 to sort of be placed in hold that would eventually be used to commission a high-level study for whatever school was not part of the final MSBA project. And when I say MSBA, I mean the Massachusetts School Building Authority. That's the one that's the state agency that is sort of working with us to grant part of these funds. So in June, when the school building committee this past June decided to move forward with a Hanlon-Deerfield consolidation, we knew that meant Sheehan would be the remainder school. And at that time, that $30,000 was allocated to Sheehan to do a very high level study of what we could do there. Since July, Doran Whittier has been working on that study and has, looked at the site and used a lot of the educational programming that we worked on for the Hanlon-Deerfield project. A lot of the feedback that we got on the Hanlon-Deerfield project sort of piggybacked on all of that research and hard work that we did for this project, and is in the process right now of coming up with 3 or 4 very high level designs for Sheehan. One will be just renovating it to bring it up to code. One will be adding onto it and renovating it. One will be building a brand new Sheehan, and there may be another brand new Sheehan as well, depending on where it goes onto the site. So we hope to have those results and present those results to the school committee, maybe at the March 2021 meeting. So this coming March, that meeting. And at that point, it's really up to the community and the town of, the appetite for more municipal projects. We do have a potential schedule that we could follow. We've been talking to the architects and trying to understand, if we were to move forward with a Sheehan project, what would a realistic time frame look like? And one of the things we talked about with them, and I'm just pulling up my notes here to make sure I get these dates right, is to perhaps bring it to a town meeting in spring of 2023, where we ask for money to do the design work all the way up until we actually put it out to contractors to bid. And then at town meeting fall 2024, so a year and a half later, we would ask for construction money, and that would allow us to have an occupancy of fall 2026, which would be about a year and a half behind the Hanlon-Deerfield project. So that's a potential Sheehan timeline. But again, it's going to come down to what the community is willing to support. So the short answer is that we do have plans for Sheehan. We do have a design study in the works. We will be presenting that, and we'll kind of have to go and see from there. I think Donna Morrison has had her hand up for a while, so I'm not sure. Is that Erica? Are you with Westwood Media Center? Could you unmute her maybe?
I sure can.
Thank you.
Yeah, could I just jump in quickly before
Sure.
Donna? I just want to piggyback on something you said, which is, all of those plans for Sheehan, which I think are important for people to understand. But the first order of business, of course, is to get the Hanlon-Deerfield project through. And I just want to emphasize that with the Hanlon-Deerfield project, we have this tremendous opportunity to partner with the MSBA and get significant funding from the state. And so I think that for the Sheehan project to be viable, we really need to first concentrate on getting this this funding from the state for this project as well.
Yes, good point, Emily. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you very much. The presentation is very thorough.
Sorry, Donna, could you
I'm-
just, I know your name, but could you just give your name and address for us, please?
I'm sorry, Donna Morrison, 303 Oak Street.
Thank you so much.
I'm a little concerned about the budget starting out at over $88 million. That is developed in July. By the time it goes to town meeting, that number will be over a year old. Construction costs are currently escalating. I personally am buying things now for my personal construction to be done in the springtime because of the costs. What do you anticipate the escalation in your construction costs? And have you figured out how this is going to affect the average household in Westwood with this project? Thank you.
Those are both great questions. We have built into this budget an escalation for construction costs, given the timeline where we are. And Tim, I don't know if you have anything to add to that. You can probably.
Yes, I mean, so we have, we are always looking at what the economic climate and trying to crystal ball what it will look like. In this case, it'll be a year and a half from now before we start construction or bid it. So that's obviously more challenging in kind of the environment we're in, because we really don't know how the economy is going to fall out. Right now, construction in the commercial construction business, we're seeing pretty significant price certainly staying the same, if not reducing, in some of the recent bids that are coming in. But we have assumed, based on kind of a, I would say, a consensus amongst our estimators and amongst frankly, some of the larger construction managers, of a 3% a year escalation. So our numbers that you're seeing tonight have built in 5%, meaning to cover the year and a half that we're away from construction.
Thanks, Tim. And then to your second point, Donna, so we are working right now with Pam Dukeman, the town financial director, to be able to answer the question of how much per tax, how much tax per household or per home value it will cost residents. We will have that information, and we will also have a calculator up prior to town meeting where you could sort of input your the property value of your home and find out exactly what the tax liability will be. We're still working on that, so we don't have that answer today, but we will have that information in the spring. Thanks for those questions. All right, turning back to the Q&A, we have a question from Peter that says, thank you for your presenting plans. Once the school plan is finished and built, can the Deerfield School be used for a solar farm since it's already a clear space? Is it true that the cost savings is 2 cents per kilowatt hour for the energy that is put back on the grid? So as I mentioned, what happens to Deerfield once the school turns it back to the town is really up to the town. I think if the town feels that that's an appropriate place for a solar farm, then I think it would be an option, but I defer to the town on that. And as for the cost savings per kilowatt hour, I don't know the answer to that question. I'm not sure if any of our panelists can know the answer to that off the top of their heads. If not, I'm sure Tom Philbin would know that. So you could reach out to him. He's the town energy manager, but does anyone on the panel know that? No, I'm thinking no. Okay.
Sorry, I don't know.
So sorry, Peter. But I would definitely ask that question of Tom Philbin. Tom knows everything. The next question is from Christine. What is the student faculty ratio in this new system? And will this project be funded by our real estate tax? So Emily, if you could speak to the student faculty ratio question.
Sure. So the student faculty ratio in this new building would mirror what it is in the system today. So for the class sizes in an elementary school, according to the school committee class size guidelines, for K to 3 are 18 to 22 students, and for 4 and 5 are 18 to 24 students. And so that kind of ratio has been built into the assumptions for the spaces in this building.
And then the question, will this project be funded by a real estate tax? It is going to be a debt exclusion. So that means that the property taxes will fund the balance of the project. And again, this information will have much more specific information about the effect on your property taxes in the spring once we have final numbers and we work through all of the numbers. One thing I should mention is that currently, as you may know, there is debt on the high school from when we built the high school. I think it was about 15 to 20 years ago. So that debt, thankfully, is going to be coming off around the same time as this debt's going on. So that actually will also help with the debt exclusion amount. So thank you for your question. Fran Fusco, how did you get to the projection of 560 students? That's a 40% increase of the existing Hanlon and Deerfield schools at 200 students each, 400 combined. Are you not projecting any increase in students with the Sheehan project? So the number of 560 came directly from the MSBA enrollment projections that it ran for this project, specifically for Westwood. And so that is a public document, that enrollment projection study. So Fran, I'm happy to try and get my hands on it and send it to you, and you can see how we got to that 560. So that's the number, and that's the number that we're carrying going forward. Again, that's what we expect to be the peak enrollment. We certainly didn't want to build a school where on day one it was too small. We actually know of schools that have opened recently that have had that problem, where, you know, they built for a certain number of students, they opened their doors and all of a sudden they're at capacity. So we certainly didn't want to have that problem. And we understood, you know, based on these enrollment studies that 500 in about 10 years, we'd get to about 560 students in that district area. So that's what we were building for. I know that when they built the high school, and Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, but when they built the high school, the enrollment projection was, I think, about 1,000 students 10 years out. And I think 10 years later, we hit 1,000 students. So I think
the enrollment projection for the high school project was remarkably accurate. So
yes.
the building was built for 1,000 students. And I think 2 years ago, we just crested that. I mean, we were at something like 1,040, and now it's starting to go back down again in that enrollment cycle that we see about every 20 years.
So that's sort of where we are. That's how we got to the 560 students. And then in terms of, are you not projecting any increase in students with the Sheehan project? Again, we're looking at the same enrollment studies for the Sheehan project, and based on sort of the numbers of the Hanlon Deerfield consolidation and the Sheehan, we're looking at all of those numbers, and that's how we're getting the enrollment projections for both schools. We have another question. We have a question from Peter, a follow-up question to Christine. What is the current student faculty ratios for the Deerfield and Hanlon? Will the new school be an improvement for the students?
So I guess I answered Christine's question in terms of class sizes. So that's the ratio between, you know, one teacher in a classroom with a group of kids. So that's the class size range. In terms of, I mean, if we threw into that special educators, for instance, art teachers, music teachers, you know, the ratio would be about what it is now, which I think is probably 14-1, somewhere in that neighborhood. So will the new school be an improvement for the students? I think the new school will be an improvement for students in many, many ways. I wouldn't say that faculty-student ratio is something that would be changing. So when we, you know, when we were looking, for instance, so what office spaces we would need and what teaching spaces, we did have to report out in our education plan what our staffing plan was for all of these spaces. And it you know, is quite similar to what it is currently.
Thank you. So I don't see any other questions in the chat or Q&A, and I don't see any hands raised. Oh, we just got another hand. Erica, looks like Donna Morrison.
Yep, she just has to unmute.
Thank you. This is just a follow-up question. You had planned in your landscaping for a post and rail fence, and I was wondering if you had considered a 4-foot green color coded chain link fence, which is much less expensive and a little bit easier on the pocketbook. You won't see it, and something that would blend into your landscaping. And I was just wondering if you considered it at all
Yeah.
as something.
Yes, I can answer that, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, that's the landscaping elements just like that is included in our list of items that we'll be looking at with the school building committee. So that it actually is one of the components that we've targeted.
Yeah, so Donna, I think the answer is more to come on landscaping. We haven't made any final decisions on that yet. That is an area where we're looking to value engineer. We have a question from Karen Jordanes in the chat. What percentage of funding would we get from the state? So again, we'll know this answer. We'll know a much better percentage number in late February, early March. Right now, our MSBA reimbursement rate is 35%, but that number, that's not going to be our number, because that number has two restrictions on it. First, the MSBA caps the amount they will reimburse on a per square foot basis, and most schools will be over that cap, so we're at that cap. And second, not everything in this plan is going to be reimbursable by the MSBA. So for example, I mentioned that we have this great large gym because we feel that it's important to serve the community, but not all of that square footage is going to be reimbursed by the MSBA, because again, they limit how much they reimburse. So there will be a net percentage amount that they reimburse, and we're not quite sure what that percentage amount is yet. But it's not going to be this 35% we're currently at. It's probably going to be closer to the low to mid 20s if I had to guess right now, but please don't hold me to that. Again, we'll know more in mid-February, early March. So this is a comment from Al Fusco. Thank you for another public forum on this topic. In order for the Finance Committee to do their job and town people to truly understand the costs for all the proposed municipal projects, the costs and tax implications need to be communicated widely and well in advance of town meeting. Similar to many public meetings held to discuss designs and materials, similar exposure needs to be applied to the finances. I'm not getting the impression that you have sufficient time in the calendar for proper exposure to all of the numbers. Well, we certainly plan on having more town meetings specifically about the finances. In addition, we will be going to FinCom and presenting to them at all of those public hearings as well. I do think that, given the COVID environment, it's a little tougher to get information out to the public if the public isn't actively seeking it, but we are going to do everything we can to push this information out to the public and really try and make sure everybody knows in advance of town meeting what the finances of this project are, what the tax implications are, because at the end of the day, we know that that's sort of at the forefront of this discussion. So hopefully Al will be able to do our job in the next few months and really get that information out. Okay.
I'm just wondering if I could go back to Peter's question. I don't think I sufficiently answered it. I mean,
Sure.
he asked a sort of a broad question about whether or not this building was going to represent an improvement for students. And I feel like I want to circle back to that and give an enthusiastic yes, that we're very, very excited about this project and the opportunities for our kids. So, if I were to rewind way back to the beginning, I would say we have some elementary buildings that are just sort of at the end of their useful life. And so just fundamentally, they will be an improvement in terms of things like the HVAC system and the fact that we won't have, crazy temperature variations from room to room. So just literally the functionality of the buildings clearly is going to be a wonderful improvement. And then just educationally, the older buildings that we have in the district were designed for a different kind of teaching and learning than we have today. And the design of this project is, it's really responding to the vision that we have for the kind of teaching and learning that we want for our kids. It just facilitates our vision for elementary education, and has some of the wonderful spaces you mentioned, the performance spaces, the STEAM rooms. Beyond that, of course, some of our older elementary buildings were built before special education was even a concept. And so this new building is giving us an opportunity to have specially designed space for some of our district-wide special needs programs. And that is just a very exciting opportunity as well. So, the outdoor space is tremendous. Just, I could go on and on about what I think this building can be for our kids.
And following up on that point, I think in terms of, sort of going back to Al's question about finances, there is a cost to not doing this project. These, as Emily mentioned, these buildings are very old and they're getting more and more expensive to maintain, and eventually they will hit the end of their useful life. They're about 70 years old at this point. And at some point we're going to have to do some sort of capital repair that will trigger compliance with certain regulations, and that will be a very expensive a project that won't deliver any of those great things that Emily just talked about, right? It would require us to bring the building up to code, but we wouldn't have the educational aspects. We wouldn't have the opportunities for special ed. We wouldn't have the community aspects of it. So, these are all things that we're hoping to make clear in the next few months that, yes, this is an expensive project. We absolutely acknowledge that, but there is a cost for not moving forward to it as well. And that's important for the community to understand as well.
May I want to jump in with one other thing. I'm thinking again back to that staff ratio question. And while the overall staffing ratio, I think the kids' experience would be that they would be in the same size class. One advantage operationally is that our current elementary schools are actually quite small. So we did a presentation a while back when we looked at the size of the Deerfield and the Hanlon elementary schools as compared to many of our neighboring towns. Hanlon and Deerfield are both around 200 students today. And what we find is that in very small elementary schools, it's difficult sometimes to staff them efficiently, because if, for instance, we have a grade level that has maybe 29 students in it, which I'm looking at a projection for next year that's just like that at Deerfield. The question is, do you have one class of 29 students, which would be very large for an elementary class in Westwood, or do you make it two classes of 14 and 15, which are very small and not operationally efficient? And so by deciding to consolidate Deerfield and Hanlon, we have an opportunity to kind of smooth out those class sizes and to staff more efficiently. So I do think that is a really important point. We often now end up with what we call singleton classes. In a grade level, you might have one very large class. And this gives us the opportunity to address that kind of issue.
Great, thanks, Emily. So we have a question from Fran Fusco. After the new tennis courts were taken out of Morrison Park for the new Islington Fire Station, the select board had promised to replace them at the new school project. Are the tennis courts not being put into the project, and why? So we currently do not have tennis courts in the project. What we heard from the athletic community was that the soccer field and the baseball diamond were sort of first and foremost the priorities. I can't, and we just honestly, we don't have the space unless we want to cut more into the woods, which, we heard loud and clear from the community was not favorable. We just don't have the space to also add tennis courts. So that's why, and also we don't have the budget for them. So they were not included in the project. From Christine, have we considered spending a smaller budget across the 3 elementary schools in need as an alternative to spending 88 million on completely developing one single school? We did look at that in connection with all the research and the proposals that we looked at. Dora and Whittier specifically looked at how much would it cost to bring each of these 3 schools up to code. And the result was actually around $80 million to bring all 3 schools up to code. And that's, again, just bringing them up to code. We still would have the same problems Emily was just talking about with the small class sizes, the inability to be flexible, the disparity between schools where you have one school that has small classes, another school that has large classes. So we absolutely looked at that question and we realized it was almost the same amount of dollars to bring those 3 schools up to code, maybe even more. And we would not be addressing any of the educational problems or needs that we had in the district. So the next question is from Polly. Where do you project the funds will come from to rebuild the Sheehan for the future? So that would be another taxpayer funded project, just like any other municipal project. So that would be up to the town whether or not it wants to support it again. But to Emily's point, you know, we're not going to have a Sheehan project if we don't have a Hanlon Deerfield project. So we really, right now, we really need to focus on making sure that that the Hanlon Deerfield project is as strong as it can be for the community, and that we get the word out, and that we really address any and all concerns or questions now about this project. Let's see, and why, so from Fran Fusco, why is the projected lifespan of the building only 50 years? I think that's the tip. I'm gonna actually defer this one to Rob. Can you talk about a projected lifespan of a building?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the 50 years is really just a short window. You know, we are expecting this building to last 70 to 100 years. You know, but some of the things that play into that are, you know, just as you're seeing in your current schools that are 70 years old, right? You have, you know, aging infrastructure systems, electrical components, HVAC systems, roofing, windows. You know, those things over time, they just become obsolete because there's newer technology that make those systems much more efficient, and improvements, just like cars and everything else that we use. But the bones, the structure, the framework, the spaces are all being designed to be very flexible, much more flexible than they were designed back in the 50s and 60s, so that we can anticipate, you know, and make easier any adjustments in education, for example, or replacement of certain systems will be easier. So overall, the building is expected to last much longer than 50 years, but there are some components that just wear earlier than others.
Thanks, Rob. We have a comment from Al Fusco. I agree with the fact that the schools mentioned require the attention you are providing. The townspeople just need to understand the whole, not just the parts. Appreciate your dedicated efforts in support of our schools. Thank you, Al. We appreciate that comment. Comment from Polly. If you took out the field in front and moved the school forward, would it save costs? I think the short answer to that is not really. You'd still have the same size school that you're constructing. And I think, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that it might save a few dollars, but I don't think it would make a significant difference.
Right. Yeah. And the other aspect is the phasing, you know, which is another reason for moving the building in the back. We wanted to maintain the existing school in its place where it is currently during construction, so that students can you know, use the school while the construction is happening. If we move the building all the way up front, we'd have to demolish the Hanlon School, and that would add additional costs to the project. In addition to that, you know, you also have the the fields, if you move the fields to the west or to the back of the property, now you're having all of the public go to the backside of the building, and then you have a difference of how you separate traffic from or pedestrian traffic from the school to the fields. It gets a lot more complicated. We did look at it early on, but
Rob, can you also address the steepness of the hill in the back and then the ledge? That if you were to move the fields to the back, you will have to demolish a lot more of the ledge and move a lot more earth in order to make the flat land for the fields.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you kind of answered it. So,
So there you go. So we have a couple questions from Polly about ledge. Specifically, she's saying you wouldn't need to, but you would not need to blast ledge. And where is your I think that's supposed to say projected cost for the ledge you have to blast. I think it's in relation to moving the school forward. I think that the amount of ledge would not necessarily, we have a certain amount of ledge. We have a contingency for ledge. It's in the budget currently. So that's where the projected costs are.
right.
And then also from Polly, did you children live through Drop Everything and Read? I'm not familiar with that, Emily. Do you know what that is?
I do actually. So boy, this is a blast from the past. Drop Everything and Read was something that we did in our elementary schools for 1 year, as I recall. And it really, it goes back to about 2006, 2007. And we were having sort of tight times in terms of the operating budget. As I recall, there had been a failed override. And there was a period of time during the day when students were doing silent sustained reading instead of having a special due to some budget cuts. And then, as I remember, we had that operational override, the last operational override that the school department has put forward to the town, which was quite a while ago now, 2008. And we eliminated that program. So I think that's what she's referring to, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure in what context for the building project, but that's what it was.
Okay. Thanks, Emily. There's a comment from Karen Jordanides in the chat. Did they consider reducing the size of the school in order to save money? The high school was about 45 million. This seems expensive, very expensive. Would redistricting help alleviate concerns on leveling class size? So I think the high school was built about 20 years ago. So if you add in cost escalation, I think the high school would be a lot more than $45 million today. And reducing the size of the school, we basically are as small as we could be for the projected enrollment to meet the educational delivery program of the school. We looked very carefully at the number of classrooms that we had, at the number of sort of extra rooms that we had in order to keep the school as efficient as possible. And this is really where we came out. So we did study that. And this is the size of the school is where we landed on that. And then in terms of redistricting, I'm going to let Emily address that one. I think that redistricting in the current, anyway, I'll let you speak to that.
So, I mean, we had a redistricting consultant, and you may recall we had the redistricting consultant looking at all kinds of different options. This was during the feasibility study when we were still trying to decide which schools might be consolidated and whether or not to consolidate. And so we sort of looked at all those ins and outs, and it was a factor in the evaluation matrix where we decided which project to go forward with. And this particular consolidation seemed to be best in terms of taking care of that issue of smoothing out classes, and also happens to be the least disruptive to the community in terms of having to redraw district boundaries.
Thank you. So Polly is clarifying, yes, to my point, with such a I think this is for the Drop Everything and Read, with such a financial expenditure, the SHIAM will suffer.
Mm-hmm. I mean, hi, Polly. I don't, I understand that concern, and I certainly have to say, as superintendent, that I'm, very concerned that we maintain like a high quality level of service in all 5 elementary schools in town, and commit to that. And we go through a process each year to develop our operating budget, which is the thing that pays for our annual expenses, such as staff. We certainly are thinking about how to keep moving forward at a very fiscally responsible but sustainable way with our operating budgets. And then this project is something that the community has to consider sort of outside of that annual operating budget process, and think about funding the building project as an investment for the community and for the future.
Great, thank you. Polly raises the question of insurance for the adjacent houses when you blast. I believe, Rob and Tim, we are going to be doing baseline studies for houses that offering it to adjacent houses. Tim, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. We routinely, when there's ever a disruptive site thing like blasting or ledge removal, we try to do pre-construction surveys of the home so that we know what their conditions are, and document them. And then if there is something that the insurance company, which is actually the insurance companies of the contractors that cover that, they're the ones who would respond to any claims, and they have some basis on which to respond when we do those surveys. And, we found that that's been very effective in getting homeowners, if there is any damage, getting it redressed quickly. That will be covered, and they will be totally insured.
Great, thanks, Tim. From Fran Fusco, 150 parking spots does sound adequate. I'm wondering if she means does not sound adequate for 250 seats being used in the gym, 400 seats in the performance area. I'm assuming she means does not. If Fran, if you meant does, that's great. if does not, then Rob, can you address the parking?
Yeah, the parking is based off of the daily use of the building. So it's based off of the number of staff and faculty that are planned to be in the building from day to day. We certainly can't plan for major events. So during major events, there may be other ways to resolve the parking spaces on site. If we were to plan for those special events, we would be having parking going all the way up into the mountains, or building a parking garage, and we just can't afford that.
I also think for 250 seats, not everyone will be taking their own car. I think you assume that there's families there. So if there's 200 or even 400 seats, 150 parking spots is a lot more than we have now, and I think that I think hopefully we'll be able to make it work for those big events that Rob was mentioning. Polly has a couple comments. The tax increase will be very ugly, and many senior citizens will be priced out, and it's sad to lose more. There are programs in town that are available for people who are unable to, particularly seniors who are unable to afford their property taxes. I think it's called the elder. I'm not remembering the name of it, but there are programs in town that can assist with that. So hopefully we will be able to take care of our seniors and also take care of the school needs as well. That's the goal. So Donna Morrison, as to choosing contractors, comparing the two processes, the high school project had severe problems with subcontractors. How will you ensure that there will be none going forward with this project? Tim, I'm going to let you take that question.
So we're well aware of the history in Westwood. So there have been a lot of changes in the laws since the high school that allow us to do a much more aggressive filtering of not only the general contractors, but also the subs, and even fairly a large roster of the subs. So we talked about this actually at the last school building committee meeting. We intend to pursue a pretty aggressive along with Doran Whittier, a pretty aggressive pre-qualification of subs to make sure that we have qualified trades as well as a qualified general contractor. But we're going to, I will tell you that since the high school, many of those actors that were involved in construction back then are out of business right now. And same thing with the library. So we've seen a lot less problems. I think Doran Whitty would agree in the school construction marketplace in the last 10 years than there were, 20 years ago. Much better. The pre-qualification has worked in many ways.
Great. And I think the police station was a very successful project.
Yes.
And that's an example of that. So thanks. And Tim worked on that. So we're in good hands. So a couple more comments from Polly, and I'm conscious of time. We're getting close to the 8:30 mark. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Maya, because we really should stick to this timeline. So why don't you just take one or two more questions, and there will be other forums and folks can reach out as well.
Okay, great. And Polly, some of your comments, I think they're just comments just about the parking and the seniors, and I think we've addressed those. So I'm going to scroll down to Fran Fusco, who's asking, what is the risk of building near or on ledge that things will escalate costs unexpectedly once they begin to excavate the sites? Tim, do you want to take that one as well?
Yes, I mean, the ledge has been quantified in terms of the extent of it, so we have a pretty good feel. It's not something that isn't, I wouldn't say it's common, but it's certainly not uncommon in the construction business. So we know the techniques for removing it are much different than they have been. So I think we're very comfortable with what the ledge presents as an issue technically. And I don't think, other than, always with sites, and that's why we carry contingency, by the way, we carry a pretty healthy contingency. If there are unforeseen conditions or things don't go quite the way we had, planned for them. But I don't think there's anything special about this ledge removal that makes us concerned about that.
Yeah, and the contingency is built into the budget already. That's not something we need to add. So we have that there. Right. So Polly makes a comment that she hopes this isn't a building that with cost overruns, and we agree, that's the goal. So I don't see any more questions in the chat. So I think, Carol, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Okay. Thanks, Maya. Hey, Rob and Maya, great job tonight. We appreciate all the information you've provided. Thanks to all of the public participants tonight. Please continue to stay tuned, and we appreciate your participation. At this point, we are going to adjourn. I think I need a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay. So let's do the roll call vote to adjourn. Maya?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Tony?
Yes.
And Amanda?
Yes.
And I am a yes. We are adjourned, people. Again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great.
Good
Thanks,
work.
everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Great
Thank
job.
you,
Thank you.
Compass
Good night.
and Whittier.
Thanks.
Everyone.